Welcome to the Nurse Dad Podcast.
I'm sorry, Las Vegas. That's what I meant.
It's great. It's rainy right now, which is
Oh,
a
really?
rare treat. Yeah.
My favorite thing about Vegas was the drive to Vegas from the San Diego area because I love the desert so much.
Yeah.
I just loved the landscapes driving to Vegas. All right. I'm a little under the weather, but I'm ready to go.
That's okay.
Hello, ladies and gents. I'm RN Glenn, aka Nurse Dad, former Navy hospital corpsman, current ER nurse, and host of the Nurse Dad podcast, available on both YouTube and Spotify. Please go to www.mynursedad.com and hit subscribe. And I am honored to have Nurse Erica on the podcast today. You are somebody I've followed for a while on Instagram. You are a nurse advocate incarnate, as far as I'm concerned, and a pediatric nurse by trade.
Mm-hmm.
Your two favorite fields, you said, were pediatric oncology, which is pretty heavy,
Yeah.
and currently you're a pediatric hospice nurse. Two words, pediatric hospice, that don't belong in the same sentence.
Yeah.
And that's just incredible. I've never met a pediatric hospice nurse. But thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
You've got a lot of things going on, and you've got your own podcast and what you do on social media and your advocacy. How often do you still report as a nurse?
So the majority of hospice patients are not in the hospital, they're in the home. So if you hear that a nurse is working hospice, that typically means they're out in the community. But what I do now is specifically program development for peds hospice. So occasionally I'll take call, I'll cover if we're short down a nurse, but in general, I'm doing more of a management program creation side of things.
Do you find yourself in contact with the families a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
How did you get into this? Was directly before pediatric oncology?
Directly before going into hospice, I was actually a unit manager of a pediatric unit in a level 1 trauma center. I had worked there bedside for many years, was eventually promoted into a management position. And then I was recruited by the chief medical officer of a hospice to come and help with their pediatric hospice program. And I was actually the chief nursing officer there.
What's it like to talk to the families regarding pediatric hospice? What's that like? I would imagine families of a pediatric patient in hospice, do they come to terms with it? Like the families of patients who are older? Is that something you ever accept? What is that like?
Yes, there's a lot of anticipatory grieving. So by the time the patient passes, not always, but typically they have come to terms with it. But there's a lot of differences between peds and adult hospice. You think of hospice and most nurses think, okay, they're going to die quickly because you have to be within 6 months or less. That's the criteria, right?
Mm-hmm.
For adult hospice. Peds hospice, entirely different. They sometimes will stay on service for years and years because since the Affordable Care Act, they're allowed what we call aggressive concurrent care. With adult hospice, and historically with all hospice, you have to quit everything, right? You cannot become a hospice patient until you agree to stop all the curative treatments, medications, that sort of thing, for the most part. Peds hospice, entirely different. They're allowed to continue, let's say, the chemotherapy, the dialysis, clinical trials even, being on a vent, infusions, you name it, because who wants to be, excuse my language, the asshole to tell the parents you can't try everything out there to try and save your kid? So the criteria to see if they meet eligibility comes down to if they were to stop whatever their aggressive care is currently, would they then likely die within 6 months? So that looks like if you stop the dialysis, will they die in 6 months? Yes, of course.
So on the surface, it doesn't look much different if the family is still trying to do everything they can to save the child.
Each case is different. Sometimes they know absolutely that this is going to end not in a happy way, and they've accepted that. But other times they're on their path, their journey, right? And they are still trying things and they still have hope. And that's not to say we don't have tragic cases where someone is admitted on a Monday and passes on a Wednesday. That happens. But all in all, they typically will stay on service for quite a long time. And so we get to know the families very well. And hospice in general, I'm a huge advocate of. It's really underutilized, but peds hospice in general, very underutilized. There's not a lot of understanding about it. The struggle is with providers. They often don't want to broach that subject with the patient because then they themselves feel like they're giving up or being a failure. But it's really a beautiful thing because not only do they get the comfort care that they need, but they're also allowed to continue all of the curative routes. And it's such a multidisciplinary approach. So we have, for example, child life specialists on staff and pastoral care, social work. All these things are components that are required by CMS for hospice. And so it's very much geared towards a family-centered approach. You're including the siblings and everything that's important to the child.
The child will never fully grasp what's happening to them.
Oh,
right?
no,
And
they often
just
do.
also to,
They very often do. It
Oh, okay.
depends on their age. We can
Right.
have a newborn up
Right.
to 21 years of age. And that's where the child life specialists come in. They are amazing at helping them understand what's happening to them and what the future may hold in their own terms that they're able to comprehend.
to not fall into a stereotype with hospice, with adult hospice, you can enter hospice and be downgraded back to palliative care, come out of it. It's not a death sentence. Sometimes that's like a stereotype with hospice. I would imagine when you say pediatric hospice, you are still facing the same stereotype. And maybe even those who are informed of what adult hospice is and don't realize that, oh no, we're still going to maintain aggressive care if that's what you want, despite the fact that your child is in hospice. I would imagine that misinformation is out there.
The first response for most people is a look of shock and horror because they've never heard of such a thing as pediatric hospice. And they think that must be the most depressing job in the world. When the reality is that nurses who have worked in peds hospice will tell you, I would much rather do peds hospice than adult hospice any day. Like I said, we definitely have those sad stories that we'll never forget. Absolutely. But there's also occasionally success stories where the clinical trial has worked and they graduate off of hospice. And it can be very beautiful and really just an honor to witness it.
I went through it too when you said pediatric hospice. I've been a pediatric nurse in the ER when it was sometimes you're the pediatric nurse that day, or I've had someone on the podcast, she's a pediatric in a burn trauma unit, and even pediatric oncology, you can wrap your head around it. But pediatric hospice, when you said that, I tilted my head. I never thought of that, even though I probably should have.
It's a thing, and we
So
need
even
more.
within,
We need more healthcare workers out there to be aware of it so that when they come across those patients that they think might meet criteria, then you can maybe be the one to suggest it to the provider and open that dialogue.
I'm a big fan of the hospice, especially if your relative has any fighting chance of recovering.
Yeah.
Hospice is a great idea.
Well,
Otherwise,
yeah.
sometimes medicine, medicine might be in the way. Oh, let's hydrate. They're dehydrated. Let's hydrate. Sometimes
It's
hydration
not the
isn't-
best
isn't done.
route. No.
Sometimes thinking medically is working against the patient, depending on where they are in their health.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where hospice comes in.
And that's a hard flip
But-
if you're going from acute care to hospice. I struggled with that in the beginning. I would hear these issues and symptoms that patients were having, and my immediate response was, have you tried this? What, can we get some fluids? That is not always the best option for someone at end of life. You're actually prolonging their suffering often.
Yes. I saw that with not a friend, but just within my community, somebody who probably should have entered hospice earlier and suffered for it. You grew up in
Crazy.
Northern California, though,
I did.
right? You grew up in Northern California. What made you come to Nevada?
I didn't really get to make that decision. My mom remarried when I was in high school.
Okay.
And my stepfather, right after they married, was retiring 30 years in the military. And so his plan prior to my mom was always to retire and move to Vegas because it was so affordable to buy a house here. Then I got taken along for the adventure in high school, and here I am a million years later.
Yeah, Nevada's a good state if you're a veteran. I'm in New York. That's a challenging state to be in. So's California.
Yeah.
What branch was your dad in?
Army. He was a command sergeant major, 30
Okay.
years.
So you're an Army brat.
Kind
I can see how
Yeah.
that fits into your demeanor.
Yeah, I have some
You're
good
right to the
memories
point,
of
and you're fearless.
yeah, he would take me on base and I couldn't because I didn't know anything about ranks or any of that. And I just couldn't figure out, first of all, why everyone stopped to salute him when he walked by. I didn't understand command sergeant major, that's a big deal. And
Yeah,
how
yeah,
everybody
yeah.
knew his name.
30 years means you were invited practically to stay on
Yeah.
because you were stellar.
Yeah,
You can skirt by and make it to 20, but 30 that's the varsity right
it
there.
is.
I started out in Navy medicine, the hospital corps, and I received an interpretation of medicine that might have not served me as well as it could have for being a civilian nurse. And I was going to go back into the Navy as a Navy nurse because of that command that you were talking about and that ability to lead and also teach. It didn't happen. And so I'm in a position a lot I find myself in where my foundation really doesn't look like at all my current situation. You were telling me that you feel like you've been a nurse your whole life because you started out as a CNA.
Oh.
That's interesting to me because I could say, oh, I started out in the military, then I got to the civilian world and I was unprepared for the changes. But you were a CNA, you were at the bedside, you saw the good, the bad, the ugly, and you still decided to become a
Yeah,
nurse.
what was wrong with
And
me?
I just realized that I didn't really illustrate nursing the best way there. But because of the advocacy that you do, and I don't know, I find that there are increasing numbers of frustrations in the profession that are just happening all the time, which we'll get into. But you saw it all and you still wanted to do it. What was the allure, despite some of the frustrations you obviously had? What attracted you to becoming an RN?
Yeah, nursing was not really ever my end goal or plan. Frankly, I became a CNA because someone told me it was a one semester program. And when you're 18 and
Yeah.
you're in a shitty relationship and your head's not in the game, and I was doing college classes, but I would drop a lot of them if they didn't hold my interest. If I was interested, I'd ace it, but then I'd withdraw from 3 of them. And I heard 1 semester for this program, and I thought, that's the attention span that I have right now. So
Yeah.
I can do 1 semester. And so I did and started working as a CNA. And every nurse that I worked with just kept telling me I need to go back to school. And I worked agency as a CNA. So I was in a new place every day, new
Okay.
setting. And nurses just kept telling me, they'd pull me aside and say, Erica, you need to go back to school. You're going to make a great nurse. And I didn't really hear them saying that to a lot of other CNAs. So I clocked it in the back of my mind because I really wasn't in the headspace to go to school at that time. And I kept working as a CNA for a few years and then finally went back to school. So yeah, my entire adult life has been nursing since I was 19. I really don't know anything else.
It's funny how life interjects like that. I think before, when you're younger and idealistic, you think in terms of the grand scheme of things, what I want to do, my impact. But you start looking at the numbers, so to speak. This is how much college is. That's the big reason I joined the
Yeah.
military. I can't afford nursing school, and I can't hold on to any money without putting it into projects that I want to do.
Right.
And just life comes in there and you do these little assessments and you make these huge decisions based on stuff like that. I just want to get away. The subprime market issue happened in 2008. New York City suddenly wasn't as glamorous as it was anymore. And just that alone, I was like, I think I'll join the military. It doesn't seem as negative as it used to be to that person that I was. And I always find that intriguing, what makes people do what they do and how much real life cuts in and leads them down a path that they did not expect. What made you go to CNA? So you're 19. It was just that program that you could do it quickly. That was it?
Yeah.
Like you never thought about taking care of people before
No,
that?
my mom had worked in a nursing home when I was really young, and she used to take me to work with her quite a bit. And so and one of her very good friends was the charge nurse. They'd call him the head nurse back in the day. And so I was around it as a kid. And so it didn't seem very scary to me. And when I heard the 1 semester, I was sold. And I aced that program.
Yeah.
I aced it.
It's funny because the simplest thing, my dad was in the Air Force for 3.5 years. I used to put on, when I was like 10, 11, his old Air Force coats and just that little familiarity.
Well, and you want to hear something funny? When I was in high school, having no plans to go into nursing, One of my first jobs was coincidentally working in a uniform shop, a scrub shop in the mall. And I didn't know anything. We sold stethoscopes and all the ugly nurse shoes back in the day and all that stuff. And I think back now, I'm like, okay, that was some weird God thing trying to point me in the right direction. Because what are the chances everyone else is working a burger joint or something or a movie theater? How did I
Right.
end up selling uniforms to nurses in high school?
I'm not even very religious, even though I've had near-death experience in my past, and I don't think in terms of that, but I look for signs everywhere. I
Me
look for
too.
little connections, and no doubt, just you get a little whiff of something, like maybe you imagined yourself wearing scrubs for a couple of moments when you were younger, and it does something to your psyche that you don't realize until later. Like you said, "Oh, I could do something like this." You've been doing this for 20 years. You've seen a lot of changes in the
Closer to
profession, I'm
30.
sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Even from 2018, I was in medicine from 2008 onward or '09 onward, but I became a nurse in 18. And even from 18, there have been a lot of changes, certainly with COVID. As I look back and I talk to older nurses, whether they established HIPAA in 1995, or we're now using these little handheld devices to scan meds, or medications are being offered with different routes, like chemo now, you can get an injection of that. Like I am chemo. It's not how things are changing, but it's like that saying, the more things change, the more things stay the same. In your experience, in this breadth of 30, almost 30 years, do you think nursing is in a better state or a worse state, or it hasn't changed?
I think, let's see, some things have stayed the same, like patient advocacy, the pride in being a nurse, core values, that kind of stuff have stayed the same. But the flip side,
Let me get one. Let me just get specific on that. I don't mean to cut you off. For example, before COVID, I used to think that medicine was this sort of dance between it's a business and we have to take care of people. And during COVID and after, it seems like it's a lot more a business than I thought it was. Um,
absolutely is.
so that's where I'm getting at. And again, I'm not trying to cast a negative light, and I'm not an anarchist. I don't want to tear anything down. Just want to have an honest conversation about it, because the numbers of nurses who leave the profession,
Yeah.
they can't be ignored, and there's a reason for it. That's why I'm heading in this direction. But I'm sorry to interrupt you.
It's okay. You're right. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Some things are better, right? Increased scope of practice, that's going up all the time compared to what nurses used to be able to do. There's some improvement in the misogyny behind nursing. For example, we're not getting up and giving a doctor our chair every time they grace us with their presence on the unit anymore. That sort
Oh, I
of,
haven't been doing that.
I've
Oh
never
man.
done that, but
Oh,
that used to be a thing, right? But overall, are we better off? No, not at all. We have never been at more of an all-time low for nursing than we are right now. Criminal prosecution of nurses, the violence has just
mhm.
escalated increasingly every single day, it seems. And we've lost the public trust. That's the biggest hit from COVID, right? Is we lost the public trust. We had like over 90% huge trust in the nursing profession forever, for decades and decades. But since COVID, that has plummeted. And it's,
There was
go ahead.
I'm not surprised by that, because there were a lot of shenanigans that occurred during COVID,
Yeah.
and a lot of people weren't as transparent as they could have been. And I do think it's unfair that nurses got associated with people's interpretation of the healthcare industry. And I always joke, I'm like, they're not paying me anything. I'm not part of the propaganda.
I
You
think
look
we
at my
are.
paycheck. Yeah. One of the questions I started dreading asking people, which I have to, is, are you up to date on your vaccines, your COVID vaccine? And a lot of people, they look at
Unleash
you
the
like, what?
floodgates. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see it in their eyes. And I just brushed past it. And again, I'm not blaming people. There's a lot of shenanigans out there, and people aren't getting the right information. And that comes from a lot of the leaders in healthcare. So I don't blame them. But it stinks to have to be associated with their suspicions, because I really am just trying to just get through my shift, yes, but
Yeah.
also as a man of integrity, provide the best service I can. And it needs to be collaborative. So when people draw up walls, it's not helpful. When you look at the numbers, I think you had said on one of your podcasts, what is it? 40% of new grads leave the profession in what amount of time? Something like you had said something on
Oh,
the
yeah.
podcast.
Don't quote me. There was one that was 40% and one that was 60% plan to
I've
leave
heard both of those.
within the first 2 years, I believe. It's
Hmm.
incredible. The numbers are overwhelming, right? And it should be a wake-up call to everyone out there, but it's not.
You're taking a young person, typically, it's a second career for me, getting older, but it's not how to take care of patients. It's coping with just the state of nursing in general.
Yeah.
In New York, when travel nurses come to New York, they can't believe it. They're like, the rumors are true. Yeah, you'll get 12 patients in the ER. You'll
Oh,
get 15 patients in the ER.
God.
I remember when I left Queens and I became a local travel nurse just to rediscover the profession, because after 2 years in Queens during COVID, I was so burnt out. I felt like it was a Christmas gift when I heard at the hospital, level 1 trauma that I was working at, they had a cutoff of 8 patients. I was like, I'm not going to get more than 8 in the ER. This is like mother's milk to me. FYI, it's now 12 in that ER. So now you're taking a young nurse and you're giving them that level of responsibility. You're also saying, oh, by the way, if you give something and there's an adverse reaction that was above your pay grade to know because the surgeon or the physician ordered it, you're still going to go down with that ship. You're still liable. So I hope you have insurance. I hope you have a good lawyer. I went through it where I worked at another level 1, and a frequent flyer wasn't going upstairs fast enough, according to him. And he outright said that me and the CNA abused him. Luckily, it occurred in the hallway where there was a camera, but it could have easily taken place in the exam room. Could have been his word versus mine. Despite that, I was still called into the back office, interrogated by police, and sent home and made to wait till the next morning. And when the charge nurse called me, she said, "Thank you for telling the truth." And I'm like, "You've known me for a year. It's like the third contract in a row." That kind of, it's like almost like you're just waiting for things not to go well for me and to just cut me loose. So it's all these little things that you're dealing with as a new grad that I think
Absolutely.
is contributing to that.
It's the
The
most
nurse
toxic
shortage,
profession. It is. Let's just call it what it is. It is the most toxic profession in this country is nursing.
I will say from my point of view, I rarely have any issues with my fellow nurses. I just finished a book called Debrief by Stephanie Beggs, and I
Read
talked to
that.
a
I
lot of
had
female
Stephanie on my
nurses.
podcast.
Yeah, I saw that. I had her on mine as
Yeah.
well. It's from her perspective, and when I've spoken to a lot of female nurses, it seems as though they certainly have to go through more lateral violence, certainly more from the patients.
Yeah.
I haven't really experienced a lot of negativity from my fellow nurses, but you're kind of staring the beast in the face when you go to work, but you have medicine behind you and you're not the prescriber. You're just, unfortunately, nursing's become a lot of task management and don't really
Box.
have time. Yes, a lot of that. And so you feel a part of it, but you're not really a major player in the game, which is why you feel expendable. And
We
also
are.
Considering that, yeah,
They
that's how they
absolutely
treat you.
see it that way. And
Yeah.
so how do you survive this profession? That's the question I get.
How do you ask a young person, very limited life experience, to do that? There was a male nurse like a year ago at a place. He was being pummeled by a patient. He was on the floor getting punched, and he punched his way out of that situation and ran away, and they still fired him for
Of
that.
course, because
I
you
know,
harmed the patient. Not that you were fighting for your own survival, but you harmed a patient.
yeah.
Yeah. And they probably reported
And
them
if I
to the
go
Board
to,
of Nursing as well.
which is insane. If I go to a fast food joint, I just slap the clerk across the face, I'm going to leave in handcuffs. But you go to a hospital. A lot of it made more sense when I read a study by the Yale School of Medicine. They reviewed 88 large healthcare organizations, went through 20 years, and found of these 88 that 95% of the net profits went to stockholder payouts. So everything that these people know about medicine, from the salaries to equipment, patient care, it's just 5% of the net profits. If they would have said 20, it was 2080, I'd say it was disgraceful. But the fact that it's 95.5. And when I read this, nurse culture made so much more sense
Yeah.
because, like, for example, with the Marine Corps, when you're with the Marines, they police call everything, they pick everything up, they waste nothing because they have small budget.
Yeah.
And when you consider how little of the money is going to actual medicine and patient care, it all seems to make sense.
Yeah, it does.
And
Acceptance is a big part of it. And it sounds so cliche, but it really was a turning point for me. And it's like we know it in the back of our head, but you have to get to a point where you stop listening to their lip service because they're going to say, oh, healthcare heroes and we value our and all that crap. No, they lie. They
yeah,
say that because they have to save face. You have to understand that is 100% a lie. They don't believe any of that. You have to get to a point where you realize the system is built on systematically victimizing nurses, right? Their business model is to understaff us. Less nurses, more money in their pocket. Refusing to provide the basic support and equipment that we need to safely care for patients. They don't care if that results in an adverse
yeah.
event. Why? They're just going to blame it on the nurse. They're just going to throw us under the bus and fire the nurse and then report us to the board of nursing. So we're so panicked that we're not even fighting the wrongful
hmm
termination because we're just fighting for our own survival. Like
Yeah, it's
we
a
are
ruthless
set for
response.
failure from day one. And you have to get to a point where you accept that to be the truth because the moral just conflict in our minds at all time trying to reconcile. They say they're working on this, management says, and they say they're hiring when they've listed positions and they've ordered us this new equipment. Ignore everything they say. Ignore everything in the emails and judge them only by their actions. Only. And that is when you will get to the point where you realize this is all a business. They do not care about patients and they do not care about nurses. In fact, they resent nurses. So
hmm
I always tell
You're
nurses,
certainly not valued that high. Yeah.
oh, no, not at all. You have to go in prepared and knowing that. And yeah, it's negative. I get criticized a lot for being so negative. I prefer to say it's honest and transparent. But I wish
Yeah.
I had known that when I went into nursing. I really, I
Would you have done it?
I think so. I think I still would have done it, but I believe that my journey would have been exponentially easier because I wouldn't have this constant conflict in my mind going, this doesn't make sense. Their actions and their words are never matching up. And surely they want to do the right thing. And I would have just recognized the corruption immediately and gone, oh, okay, there it is. There it is. I'm prepared for this. Yep, there it is. And then you have
hmm
to educate yourself and know how to fight back, know your state labor laws, try to organize your coworkers if you don't have a union, know what reporting agencies you can report what to, and always be creating your paper trail. So it's not enough that we have to document CYA regarding patients, right? We also need to
hmm
every single day be documenting in some way, shape, or form to protect ourselves and our job, right? So that means like a little
That's how I
journal,
view
note,
documentation.
not even in the medical record. I'm talking about your own little journal, your
Okay.
note app in your phone, whatever it is, some kind of paper trail. If you're having these crucial conversations with a manager in person, you need to be sending a summary email, printing it, saving it at home. You need to always have a paper trail to be thinking, what if I end up getting fired or disciplined for this? How am I going to be able to prove that I notified them, that I did this, that they were aware of it? Always be thinking in that way, which we shouldn't have to do. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's not a negative. It doesn't help anybody. This is like life advice to go into something with a romantic notion of how it works, especially when they're not going to have your back when you need their support.
Yeah.
It's not being negative. It's not being cynical. You don't want to become cynical. If you get hurt and you don't see that coming, that's how people become cynical. It's just being prepared for the worst, hoping for the best, like they say, and being prepared for the worst. And like you said, that paper trail, just even going back to the medical record, I do my best to document more of the kind of paint the picture, because it's not just of what I did, it's undeniable proof that I was a good nurse this shift, because I know that if it's not there, no one's going to have my back. It has to look like that on the chart. Sometimes little touches, like you do have to comment on some of the more mundane things. Got a blanket. Hey, the food was there. Did this, that, to create that picture. Like I was there. I didn't just hang the IV fluid or whatnot. I was there for that person, or the CNA was there for that person.
Yeah.
But there's like this paranoia about it. It's not just because it's your job or your duty. You're like thinking to yourself, it's almost like when someone who deals with substance abuse, say an alcoholic, that it's every day is day one. It's like that as a nurse. Like you're only as good as your last shift, because you could be working somewhere for 10 years and suddenly, oh, a patient came in that day,
Yeah.
didn't like you, blah, 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 said you abused them. You don't have the luxury, like I said, of having treated that person in the hallway where there's a camera. You were behind a curtain. Easier to get rid of you. You did 10 years, thank you. Easy to get rid of you.
Absolutely. I worked at level 1 trauma center for almost 10 years. So I get that, because I absolutely felt pushed out. I left on my own accord, but I felt pushed out. So yeah, I get it. You're never safe, no matter how long you've worked there, no matter how much of a senior nurse you are, you're never safe. Tomorrow could be your day where you're the fall guy.
I knew a nurse who was strangled so hard that she suffered some neck fractures. And eventually she did go back to work, but she described it as just not feeling comfortable there, and not just treated in such a way where almost like she was a reminder to people of what happened, and ultimately felt like she needed to go, like she was pushed. Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Well, yeah,
And
because
that's
she
just a
became
terrible,
the liability, right? So they knew
yeah.
that she was a victim. They knew that if she understood and lawyered up or did any of the things that you can do to fight back, that the organization would be in a liable position. And so instead of taking that risk and doing the right thing and supporting the employee, they do this thing where it forces you to quit, where they just chip away at you little by little and calling you in the office every damn shift and make it miserable for you in every way until you finally look around and go, this isn't what it used to be. I'm out of here. I can't anymore.
I witnessed that with a new director at another contract, only 3 months, but the nurse, she was there for 20 years, and she was very well respected, and she unofficially was the nurse educator, especially for new grads. And then someone came in and very slowly was like, no, you're not going to do that anymore. I'm going to take this file you made that you've been using that's so great, and we're just going to do it again, harping on certain things and turning little things into huge issues. And eventually she left after 20 years. It's just it's heartbreaking to watch.
And that's what they do. That's their end goal.
Do you think it's because maybe pay? Hey, she leaves, we can hire someone
Oh, yeah. Often.
newer for cheaper? Or...
Yeah, absolutely. They do not care how experienced their nurses are. They don't care if they have an entire shift with nothing but new grads. They're cheaper. And they don't know their rights typically, and they're not going to report things. It's a win-win. It supports their business model.
Yeah. And you're also in a nurse residency now, so you're just under the microscope even more. It's easier to get rid of you.
We're a necessary evil in their eyes. They need us, right? You can't have any kind of healthcare facility organization without nurses. It's a regulatory requirement. They need us to keep their doors open, but they can't stand us. And that sounds like an exaggeration, but it's not. We are truly a necessary evil in their eyes because they don't get reimbursed for our services. They cannot bill for nursing services. We are the largest cost center in every single healthcare organization, period. It doesn't matter. Nursing is their biggest cost center. We cost them a lot of money and they cannot bill for our services. So we're a drain on them in their eyes. In 2025, here we are, still nursing services is wrapped in with the daily room rate. We are no more valuable than the plastic water pitcher that you get. They get nothing for nursing services. And so we are valued as absolutely nothing. Do they resent nurses? 100%. Do they see us as dispensable? 100%. Do they make us the fall guy to get out of any liability? Yeah, nearly always. That's why I say it is
Go into
the
that
most
real,
corrupt profession.
just stay on that for a second. I've heard of that. I haven't thought about it for a while, the nursing services. So just explain that real quick for people as opposed to, say, a physician and how it works on the paperwork. How does that work?
Yeah. So if you are a provider, a physician or a nurse practitioner, physician assistant, you not only are in there documenting and writing orders, but you're also putting in your ICD-9 codes or whatever for everything that they can bill for. So based on diagnosis
Hmm.
and treatment, and this is not my area of expertise, but everything that you do is associated with a code that the hospital, the employer, the organization gets money for. They bill the insurance, they bill whoever for it. They're getting money back. That's why providers are so valued. They are money earners. That's why they have the doctor's lounge stocked with food and all of that. Nursing does nothing but cost them money. And that's why, if we're lucky, we get a cookie on National Nurses Day, right? We are simply not valued. There is no line item for nursing, even though we're a highly skilled profession, a science-based profession that is just constantly going up in the technology. It doesn't matter. We're rolled in with the daily room rate, like the pillow,
Yeah.
the water pitcher, the urinal. Oh, there's a little blurb, nursing services. There is no reimbursement. We need CMS to develop a reimbursement model for nursing. It would be a game changer overnight. We would be immediately respected and valued.
And the only push I saw for like a LPN to become a BSN and a tuition assistance is because the numbers do show that bachelor's degree nurses deliver greater care. Obviously, that means less liability for the hospitals. But if they could just stock up with LPNs, they probably would because they don't have to pay them as much. But the studies show that BSN wards off more liability in the long run for hospitals. That's really what it comes down to, what you just said. I've overheard a few times, and I love my physicians, most of them, they've been great, but a few have been frustrated, and I've heard them say to another physician, they're not going to do anything to me. The money I make this place, to
Exactly.
that
They
effect,
know their
which is
worth.
an argument. Exactly. And I was thinking to myself, what could you get away with? You
Oh,
know,
they get away with
what
everything
damage,
often. And
what
especially
damage can you
surgeons,
do?
because they generate the most revenue. When was the last time you heard a surgeon being held accountable for anything? Doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And on that note, to illustrate just how much the money holds precedence over everything, I happen to have in my family a surgeon, and he became a new spinal surgeon. And in his office, in the surgeon lounge, I guess, this hospital puts every surgeon's photograph and all their orders for the year up on a wall and rates them in terms of how much they've cost the hospital. And the hospital has like a third party watchdog group that'll call them up and say, why did you spend $800 on this pain medication? His answer is the patient was in pain. But that just goes to show you to the extent, even on their level, that they're not just whatever I want to do, I do. Like the watchdogs are on them too.
They
from
absolutely are.
bottom
They're
to
under
top.
tremendous pressure as well to not order things that they know would be in the patient's best interest. Yeah, go the cheaper route, even though it's not technically the preferred treatment. Yeah, they're under pressure as well, but they're still much more respected.
Of course, they have a lot more power. I would certainly go down before any surgeon, which is by law, like even if a medication is ordered by a physician and something in that medication reacts differently with something else that the patient is receiving, and this is way above my pay grade, I will still go down
Yeah.
because I gave it.
Right.
That's how they've
Yeah,
designed
not
it.
the
You want to talk about the
physician that
fall guy?
ordered it, not the pharmacist that signed off on it, but you, the nurse that gave it. Yeah, it's your fault.
Yeah. Do you think the best thing we can do as a profession is make it so our services are billable on
That
that
would be
level?
a
Like
game
that's like the
changer.
only way, right? That's the only thing.
I mean,
It's the money, so we got to be part of the money.
yeah, absolutely. That would change everything. The entire landscape of nursing overnight would change dramatically if they could bill for nursing services. That would be huge, because aside from that, there's only two ways to affect change for nurses. Whether you like it or not, or you support it or not, the reality is you have two options right now. You can either get legislation passed that protects nurses, mandated ratios, that sort of thing, or you can unionize, because those are the only two enforceable things: a union contract and laws. That's it. That's it.
But I've worked for plenty of union and non-union hospitals, and it's the same despair that I would imagine a new nurse goes through is still going to be there. You're still expendable.
Yeah.
It might not be as quickly maybe as a non-union hospital, but ultimately, if something happens, some kind of adverse reaction or whatever it is to protect someone else, you're still going to be out, whether it's union or not.
Yeah, but you do have
That's what
more
I've noticed.
protections with the union. And there's some
You do.
unions that are stronger than others, for sure.
Mhm.
I don't talk
That's
about
right.
that a lot, but that's true.
Hey, just a reminder to those who are watching and listening, if you like what you're hearing, please go to mynursedad.com and hit subscribe. And also, please check out Nurse Erica's channel, which will be appearing in the description below. You had touched on the scope of nursing that is increasing. And one of my discontents when I went from becoming a Navy hospital corpsman, which technically is a paraprofessional, to a RN, was that as a corpsman, I could do a crike, I can do needle thoracentesis, I could suture. And when I became a nurse, I realized I wasn't permitted to do any of that. As I continue onward and I encounter more people, especially with the podcast, I talk to other people. I remember that a paramedic can intubate somebody or a flight nurse. It's not the scope of nursing, it's what the hospital permits us to do.
Correct.
When you're in a code room and that physician is able to intubate almost with their eyes closed, it's not because they went to medical school, it's because they're allowed to do it. And practice makes perfect. A nurse could easily do something like that, just like a corpsman. An 18-year-old corpsman can do it. Especially new nurses forget that, and you get caught up because you're so busy in trying to complete tasks, trying not to drown. It's like on a good shift, your chin is like under the water a little bit, and that's a good shift.
Right.
Otherwise, you're just struggling to get through it. They keep things flowing because you feel bad for the person waiting hours and hours for that CAT scan, and you get caught up in that. But you reduce the profession in your mind. Like in your mind, what a nurse is starts to become, you start to believe that all you're meant to do is carry out tasks. And the profession is so much more. And I wonder too, if it's also by design. It gets into a little conspiratorial maybe, but it's certainly not promoted pride in what you're doing or any systematic reminder that, hey, nurses, you guys do a lot. You can do this. It's almost, hey, you got to get that patient upstairs.
Yeah.
Or how come this person's vital signs is 4.5 hours, hasn't been done, you're 30 minutes late, or whatever it is. It just seems like that task mentality is just constantly reinforced and people forget. And it drags down the profession, and it makes it almost like it's something you don't have to defend as much, or it's not worth as much. That person's a PA and you're just a nurse. A new generation of nurses might start to believe that.
Yeah, and there's so many.
I don't know if that came out right.
No, I hear you. It's true. There's a million things that we have to constantly be juggling and thinking about, just beyond the checking of the endless boxes. Getting back to the scope of practice, like you said, you have to know your state scope of practice. And if you're a traveler, you have to know that for every state that you're working in, because it's different state to state. But then you also have to know what you're allowed to do by policy, according to your employer. So just because you may be able to do something according to the state Board of Nursing doesn't mean you can at your hospital. And employers will try to manipulate that to their benefit. And the opposite, they'll try to get you as a nurse to do something, and it's not in our scope of practice. No, it's fine. It's fine. We do that all the time. Are you afraid to do it? We do this all the time on this unit. It's not an issue. It's so easy. That kind of constant manipulation. You have to always be aware of what you're allowed to do and be juggling that in the back of your mind, in addition to the million other things that we have to constantly stay on top of.
Yeah. I once took a contract at a hospital where They didn't allow the ER nurse to put in a Foley.
Oh, that's
And
ridiculous. Oh my gosh.
and also you couldn't access a port. Ironically, the nurse who was sent down to access a port on one of my patients couldn't do it, and I wound up doing it anyway. And I did Foley's anyway at times, but I also have to remind myself, if that's their policy and in any way something occurs, you're gonna go down.
Yeah.
And it's just and it was so ridiculous, a Foley
Yeah,
catheter, and
what's the
how
reason?
many new
Who's doing
nurses.
it then? The doc is putting in
Yeah,
a Foley?
and then they were not happy about that either. You now
No.
gonna go to your physician, you put in a Foley catheter. But I wonder how many new nurses think that's outside their scope, and they shape what nursing is and what it can be
Yeah.
based on all these hospital limitations. And then one day you're saying someone's trying to say, "Hey, stick up for yourself, and you're worth so much." And in your mind, you're like, "I can't even put in a Foley catheter. What am I
Right.
even supposed to do?" And it's just, yeah, it's a real shame. It's because as a corpsman, it's man, I could do if I have my Marine or some patient is down. It's if I got to do a crike, if I got to do, and it's like the sky is the limit with what I feel I can do and what I practice, and it feels powerful and it's humbling, and it just makes you feel like you're standing shoulder to shoulder with the med team. And
Yeah.
I feel like over the next several years, especially since COVID, there's been this like slouch, not literally, but just like this lack of pride or understanding in just what you can be, what a nurse, what it means to be a nurse. And
I
I just
agree.
think it psychologically goes into all that these nurses are willing to take until they can't take it anymore. Unfortunately, they leave. And it's really sad to see. And I try to always, when I work with new nurses, remind them of what they're capable of. You're limited
Yeah.
by the hospital you're working at. You're not limited by your scope of practice. You can pretty much do almost anything if they need a nurse to do it and they train them for it. What I like about your channel, Erica, is that you are a huge advocate. Now that you tell me that your dad was 30 years in the Army, I know where some of that energy comes from. You're also a confident nurse. You've been doing this for 30 years. You're clearly able to lead nurses. You've had leadership positions. You're not afraid to work in a department that's going to overtax you, whether it's pediatric hospice or the ER or whatever it may be. Clearly, just even talking to you, it's like whatever we need to talk about, we'll talk about it. And you're very direct. You're like, as I said before in the beginning, a nurse advocate incarnate. That's what you are. But you've really doubled down. Like you will post several stories at once. You'll follow up. You'll respond to replies that you've received. You'll post photos from the floor at different hospitals, revealing some of the shenanigans going on. Where does this all come from? What made you so passionate about this new element? Because I'm assuming this is something you've entered at this stage of the game, or were you always an advocate for nurses?
I've always been an advocate. Anyone that's ever worked with me will tell you, like, yeah, that's Erica. It's just on a bigger platform now, but everything that I do, I've always done. Instead of it being just for my coworkers, my unit, my company, now it's pretty big. But I've always been this outspoken and this transparent. I've never shied away from taking the risk to show what's going on behind the curtain, because they count on us being so beaten into submission, so manipulated that we are afraid to speak out. That's the problem. Is 99% of nurses are cowards, and I get a lot of flack for saying that, but I will die on that hill. They will complain all day at the nurses station, in the break room, in the locker room, outside of work. But you ask them to show up to the rally, put their name on the petition, go to the meeting in HR, crickets. Oh, suddenly their kid is sick. They can't do it. They can't make it. They're cowards. They're afraid to speak out, and therefore nothing changes. Imagine if we just collectively, all of us together, stood our ground. We would have all the power in the world, and they would have no choice but to acquiesce. But they know that 99% of nurses are not going to do it. And so that's why I've always been outspoken. I've seen that from day one.
We just spoke at length about the lack of power that we have as nurses. Do you think nurses will look at that and say, I have 2 kids at home or 3 kids at home,
Yep.
God forbid I got fired? Do you think
Listen,
that's fair?
I've been fired as a single mom more than once because of being outspoken, because of doing the right thing. So there is not an excuse that someone can bring to me that is going to make me sympathetic. Because if I can do it, so the hell can you. And I did. I never ask anyone to do anything that I myself haven't done.
You're worried that, will I be perceived a certain way, or because I'm on the treatment team, even if they go upstairs and there's a lawsuit, they're going to comb over everybody who's ever treated this patient. You do feel isolated. Like what I said, that frequent flyer of a patient accused me and the CNA of abuse, which was obviously untrue and was proven to be untrue. But very quickly, you're working in a team, and then suddenly it's just like, where is everybody? I can now be seized and swept under the carpet. Like, we're a nurse team, and then suddenly, where is everybody when
You're on an island.
looking at
Yep. And suddenly no one has a word to say. You couldn't shut up 10 minutes ago, Janet. You're not going to say anything now that the manager is standing here? Okay, I see you for what you are. That is very much my outlook. I am the biggest advocate for nurses. I understand. I live, eat, and breathe and speak nursing. I will advocate for any nurse, but I also see you for what you are. And you are the reason that we can't move forward, because you refuse to have any courage. You refuse to do what you know is the right thing to do. You refuse to back up your coworker. You refuse to stand with them. It's a real problem.
There's a lot of professions where if you pucker up, you will receive a fair amount of security, but nursing is not that profession. It doesn't matter if you're a manager, it doesn't matter what position you have, they will get rid of you.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in nursing.
I look to you for updates. I'm like, how did she find that out? I love reading the comments of your videos because you'll get a lot of people who are going through it. They have a lot of value. Your audience, I'm part of your audience, but I find that there's different types of channels, but your channel is really big on the advocacy. People are very quick to show you, confirm, reconfirm what it is you're talking about. Look what this person posted on the door, and look what is happening here. And I will say, following your channel has brought up a lot of things that I've seen and even forgot about. The way you report on some of the responses, you are not afraid to go there.
No,
and I
I'm
commend
not.
you for that. I really do.
Someone has to do it, because the sad reality is that the mainstream media and the news, they won't tell the real story about nurses. Even when there's a high profile case and they have no choice but to report on it because it's so high profile, they only do it begrudgingly. And it's always a biased view in favor of the company, because you'd be shocked how many healthcare organizations actually they donate money to local newspapers and news stations. So do you really think that the news is going to tell the real story when their funding is dependent on that healthcare organization? No. That's why I started with the news. It was never my intent to be this like unofficial news reporter that I've somehow ended up being. It's because the mainstream media won't do it. I've done a ton of interviews, and I always tell them the real story. And every once in a while, I come across a really well-meaning investigative reporter whose eyes are wide and they're finally seeing it when they hear what I'm saying, and they're ferociously taking notes, and they're going to do this and they're going to report on this. And then the story comes out and it's never there. Never. When I started years ago, because I've been doing this for years now, there were a handful of online supposed nursing publications. And they're supposed to be for nursing. Even they don't tell the whole story, because every single one of their stories gets put through their corporate attorney or their sponsors. Guess what? I don't have a corporate attorney. I don't have a financial interest that I'm beholden to. I answer to no one other than myself and God. And no one else can say that, because everyone else online, frankly, is a sellout. There's only 2 or 3 that report the news responsibly. The rest of these nurse advocates, first of all, they've never advocated in real life, and they don't even work as a nurse anymore, but they don't want you to know that. But secondly, they do it irresponsibly. They'll say that someone has died before it's confirmed. And guess what? They didn't die. They put out misinformation all the time. One anonymous nurse will message them some sort of story and they'll run with it. When nurses reach out to me, they know that they're going to get a million questions. We're going to go back and forth for what? I'm going to ask for evidence and
Mhm.
documentation. And I'll sit on something sometimes for weeks or months. And I do my research because that's my reputation. That's what I'm known for, is for doing my research. So my goal isn't to be the first one to get it out there and be irresponsible. My goal is to vet it, get all the information, read every article, not just one, talk to all the nurses, not just one, and give the information that I feel comfortable going with, that is credible.
I would imagine from the healthcare industry perspective, in terms of throwing money at newspapers and media organizations, trying to mitigate the fact that misdiagnosis is one of the leading causes of people dying in this country. And when you think about that, when you think about all the power it takes to quiet that and maintain this image of the almighty medical industry, we have your cure, we're going to treat you, if you can expect the best care, that's possible. When you take out all the propaganda it takes to maintain that, a lot of it makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of it is just a PR stunt. It's just a really good, expensive PR campaign that these healthcare organizations put out.
And so if you're young and you're thinking about becoming a nurse, no,
I get a lot of flack for that, that I'm dissuading people from going into the nursing profession. I probably am, but that is not my end goal. My goal is for nurses to be aware of it, to be empowered to know their rights, and go into it with their eyes wide open so they don't suffer the same way that I did, because I didn't come out of nursing school knowing all this stuff and advocating for myself years and years ago. It's been a long, tumultuous journey to get to this point. Had I known all that going in, my journey would have been so much easier. So that's my goal, is for nurses not to necessarily say, I don't want to be a nurse, it's not worth it, but to go in with their eyes wide open.
yeah, know your value. It's the same mentality that said, what do you mean a 10-year-old can't work in a factory? They're poor. What is he going to ever be in his life? Or lunch breaks, or workers falling into the cement back in the day, building the Brooklyn Bridge. What do they need harnesses for? It's the same mentality. You're basically fighting to say, I'm a human being, I have value, and what I do is important, and I don't deserve to be treated like cattle. I don't deserve to. I get it. I get all business. There is the financial component, but that doesn't mean that anything compared to finance is infinitesimal. It's nothing. And also, one thing to throw in too, one of the sicknesses with the money component is what constitutes a profit. Like hospitals will increase. I read that if you have insurance, it'll increase the price like 300%. If you don't have insurance, it still increases something 270%. And not just in the healthcare industry, what constitutes a profit is like not keystone pricing, where it costs $1 to make something and we sell it for 2. No, they want to make something for $1 and sell it for 50.
Yeah.
And if they don't make 50, it's a financial loss, and they will hire based on that. And not only that, we want, according to the Yale School of Medicine review of the 88 large healthcare organizations, we want 95% of the net profit. We want to make it for $1, charge it for 50, and then keep 95% of the profits, and the 5% goes out to everybody else. And let's also not hire enough people because that costs a little too much money.
And they hide it.
It's
They
sick.
cover it up. Not only do they hire professional investors and professional lobbyists to lobby against any and all legislation that might help nurses or patient safety, right? But they hide their money.
Right.
Some of the worst offenders are nonprofit hospitals and organizations, right? So they've got it in offshore accounts. They've got it under this label. They've got it hidden under here. There is so much money in healthcare.
They took a
And
cue.
they
They took a cue from the universities.
Yeah, but they'll report that they took a loss. They took a loss last year. No, the
Right.
hell they didn't. And why is your CEO earning $17 million a year? Come on.
Do you have children?
I do. I have 2 kids. They're grown now. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 3 and 5. I'm in the trenches.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You're in it. You're in the thick of it. Yeah.
We were talking about trying to get hired. It's been a couple of years I've been trying to get a staff job. I might have actually been hired today,
Yeah.
but it is tough. Sometimes I feel like my experience works against me because I want to negotiate. There's a particular salary I think I deserve, and a skill that I bring to the table, whether I'm in a trauma room or a code room or I'm on the floor. I'm very independent. I'm usually the go-to, but I feel like what you were saying, nobody cares. I'm not saying individually, like I've worked with some great managers and stuff like that, but in terms of as a system, they just don't care. Like you were saying, I actually meant to comment on this. I remember before COVID, when I was switching from a step down ICU to the ER, I had an interview to be accepted into the ER.
Right.
They had to assess me. And even though I was in the military medicine and step down ICU,
Yeah.
they had to see if I was able to be an ER nurse despite all that. Where now I see a lot of new grads in every department, like you were saying, whether it's 3 or 4 new grads in an ICU or half the ER floor is
Or
they're
all
new
of night
grads. It's
shift
like
because emergencies don't happen at
all of
night.
night shift. Yes, a lot of times they try to get me into night shift because they need more experience. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's whether it's what's available or what's available at what you're willing to pay,
Uh-huh.
or yeah, that standard is gone. You want the job? Come on in. That's one of the changes I've noticed. Who knows what AI is going to do? I've heard things that they want to bring back Filipino nurses. It's just such a mess. But I do have hopes for the future because of people like you. I do have a lot of faith in the younger generation. That's why I love talking about preventative health, which is a new concept. And Gen Z and millennials have brought that in. People are paying a lot more attention to some of the issues that we're talking about, probably because people feel like they have less to lose now. Who knows? Maybe there's a positive in that. But it's certainly a fight worth making. It's not worth dropping out and giving up or becoming cynical or hard-hearted. And I will continue to watch you and watch you fight for everybody and join you myself. I would love for this channel to grow and take it to DC or just go to DC as soon as there's any kind of legislation that's worth fighting for. That would be great. I'm in it to win it and I'm here to stay. And thank you for what you do. You're an inspiration.
Thank you for having me.
Before you go, what's the name of your podcast?
Nurses Uncorked. If you can see the sign behind me. The Nurses Uncorked
If you couldn't figure that out
podcast.
yet.
Yeah, and you can find me on social media at the Nurse Erica, pretty much on every platform, and it's Erica with a C.
I do YouTube and Spotify for podcasts. Are you on a lot more platforms than that? Some
All of
people are like,
them.
get on all of them. And I'm like, there's just so much work involved.
I
I'm like
think
by
I'm on
myself
all
over
of them.
here.
Yeah, all the major ones. Apple,
Yeah.
Spotify, YouTube,
you-
iHeart, Audible. Yeah, you name it.
And not a lot of them are video podcasts. A lot of them are just audio, right?
They are all audio. Obviously, YouTube has a video component. So does Spotify. And in the
Yes,
past,
so does
I've
Spotify.
had I can't figure out how to do it now. I've got to get it back to where it shows the video component.
It's tough sometimes with the 3 and a 5-year-old. I would love to do more, but sometimes it's when the kids get home, I'm going to take them to the library
And then
or I'm going to take them to the gym or go outside. And I don't regret that, but it definitely
eats your time.
will contribute to my lack of content. Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
My
and
pleasure.
I look forward to continuing to watch you. And your information will be down below in the description.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed my discussion with Nurse Erica. It took a while. It took a while to get her on here. She's a very busy woman. This is a thrill for me because I do follow her. I like what she does. I really like what she does. And the fact that she would come on my podcast, that's a big deal. I'm Glenn, if you haven't figured that out yet, aka Nurse Dad. If you go to mynursedad.com, hit subscribe. It'll subscribe you to my YouTube. I'm also on Spotify, but I try to funnel people to my YouTube because it just has more content. I don't just post podcast episodes, but I break them down into shorter clips. So there might be a 3-minute clip, a 5-minute clip, a 12-minute clip, but there is something for everybody. I do interview people from all walks of life. And I also want to plug in, if you go to mynursedad.com, you go to the online store, there are 2 books. This one is in e-form. This is Zach's Dad is Deployed. It's a diverse cast of characters, children whose parents are deployed and how to cope with that. And then my love letter to my daughter. This exists in hardcover. Isabel Learns to Share. It's a great book. I worked on the illustrations as well. It's 100% written by me. Both books are written by me, no AI. So if you go to mynursedad.com, you go to the online store. There also will be a pop-up. If you fill out the pop-up, you get my 35-page free guide Just a few things in there, again, for everybody. For students who want that stellar GPA but don't want to give up on their hobbies, some military techniques that I learned and also developed while in nursing school. I put that in there so you can go for that GPA and not have to give up on the things that you love, which is really depressing. There's also multitasking tips for new nurses. There's a nurse sheet for those of you who are printing out sheets to write information on. I made one for you. And also a chapter for everybody, something that I see is holding a lot of people back. And the answer came from treating Marines in the field, something that they taught me. And I put that in the book. And if you fill out the pop-up for the free guide, if you don't want the free guide, that's fine. But it also enrolls you in my newsletter, my Nurse Dad newsletter. It's new. I won't spam you. I won't over-email you. But I'm trying to develop a community that's separate from social media. And you're able to contact me, so that's a good thing. That's all the time that I have. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you like what you heard, please subscribe. If you didn't like anything that you heard today, I thank you for watching anyway. I thank you for listening. You take care, everybody. God bless. Stay hungry. Be humble. Nurse Dad out.